The ground was dry, the air was silent. Nothing moved, except one man sitting in the center of a wide circle. His name was Rai, and he was human. All around him stood more than 50 alien warriors, tall and armed. Their skin was rough, their eyes cold, and their weapons glowed with strange power. Each one belonged to a different alien species. Some had claws, some had horns, some had metal skin. But they all had one goal: kill the last human. And yet, they were waiting. For hours, they had surrounded him. No one attacked. No one spoke. Rai was just sitting on the ground, his legs crossed, his head slightly down, hands on his knees. Calm, silent, still. The aliens didn't understand. "Why isn't he running?" whispered one of them in his own language. "Why doesn't he fight?" asked another. A tall alien general with red armor stepped forward. His name was Jorak. He was from the war race known as the Threxan. He raised his hand, signaling silence among his soldiers. "He has no weapons," Jorak growled. "No armor, no tech. He is alone. Yet he does not move. Why?" One of the younger warriors stepped forward. "Maybe he's already dead." The others laughed. But Jorak did not. He looked closer. The human was breathing. Very slow. Like he was sleeping with his eyes open. But Rai wasn't sleeping. He was waiting. Above them, in the sky, dark ships floated. Thousands of alien fleets had gathered here on the broken moon of Travis 9. This was the last mission. The last war. The last man. And yet, he just sat there. 5 hours passed. The alien soldiers were restless now. Some whispered about Project Echo, a secret Earth experiment. Some said this human was dangerous. Others said it was just a story, a myth. But none of them moved forward. They were afraid, and they didn't know why. Suddenly, Rai opened his eyes. A soft sound passed through the air. The silence broke like glass. He slowly raised his head and looked at Jorak. His eyes were calm. No hate, no fear, only patience. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried far. "You're all already dead. You just don't know it yet." For a moment, nothing happened. Then one alien laughed, then another. "What is this?" "A joke," a green-skinned warrior shouted. "Is this all humans have left?" "Words," said another. But Jorak didn't laugh. He felt something strange. His heart was beating fast. His armor felt heavy. The ground beneath his feet felt weak. "What do you mean?" Jorak shouted at the human. "Explain yourself." But Rai said nothing. He just looked at them, one by one, calm, quiet, deadly. The aliens started to argue. "Kill him now." "No. Wait. What if he's telling the truth? He's bluffing." And then, an alien near the back of the circle fell to the ground. No one touched him. His weapon dropped. His eyes rolled back. Blood ran from his ears. Dead. He was sick. One soldier yelled. But then, another one fell. Then another. Within 1 minute, 6 aliens dropped dead. No wounds, no signs of attack. Panic began to spread. "What's happening? Are we under attack?" "I told you, he's doing something." Jorak looked at Rai. The human had not moved. He had not spoken again. But still, his presence felt heavy, like a storm ready to explode. "This is impossible," Jorak whispered. Rai finally stood up. Slowly, gracefully. He brushed dust off his clothes and looked around. "You waited 5 hours for me to speak," he said. "You should have used that time to run." And then he smiled. The aliens raised their weapons in fear. Rai closed his eyes. The circle was broken. The moment Rai smiled, the fear in the circle became real. Aliens who had laughed before were now backing away. Some were whispering to each other. Others had their fingers on their triggers. but none dared to shoot first. Still, Rai stood silent, calm, like he was waiting again. But before the next death could happen, the screen inside Jorek's helmet blinked. Sila Sci-Fi Project ECHODTECTED. Jorek's eyes widened. No, it can't be, he muttered. He looked at the human again, but now, not as prey. Now, he saw a weapon. A living, walking weapon created by Earth. Pro-GCTETAO. A ghost from the past, a name the galaxy had buried after the fall of Earth. No one really believed it existed. But now, Jorek knew it was real. 10 years ago, Earth, Underground Facility 14. In a hidden lab beneath the ruins of Old London, a group of desperate scientists and soldiers stood around a boy. He was just 16. Black hair, quiet eyes, and a strange calmness even in chaos. His name was Rai Malik, and he had just survived the neural bomb test, the only human who did. Dr. Kessler, the lead scientist, stared at Rai's brain scans. His mind is adapting, she whispered. He's absorbing coded speech patterns like data. Can he use it? Asked General Connors, standing behind her. Not yet, but if we finish Echo Protocol, he'll become something the galaxy has never seen, a human voice weapon. General Connors nodded. Then complete the program. Earth doesn't need soldiers anymore. It needs a sentence that ends wars. Back on Dravis 9. Present time. Jorek stepped back, breathing heavily. His soldiers were dying, and the human had barely spoken. This was no coincidence. He activated a private channel to his ship. Confirm Echo signature, he ordered. The AI voice responded. Confirmed. Neural wave radiation matches Earth's classified Echo protocol. Warning. Verbal exposure may cause cerebral collapse. Shut it down. Jorek growled. Unable. Signal is self-generating. It's already inside your network. Jorek felt cold sweat on his skin. This wasn't just a human trick. It was a virus of sound, one that started with a sentence and ended with silence. Meanwhile, Rai stood still, watching the fear grow like fire in dry grass. He didn't enjoy it. He didn't hate them either. He just remembered. He remembered the day Earth burned, the day the galactic empire called the Core invaded, crushed Earth's defenses, and laughed while burning its cities. They didn't even take prisoners. Rai had survived. But something inside him died that day. The scientists gave him a new purpose: speak and destroy. Now, here he was. The Core's elite army stood around him, armed with everything except understanding. One alien finally snapped. He's just standing there. I'll kill him myself. A massive blue-skinned brute with 4 arms rushed forward. He lifted his plasma axe high in charge. But before he could reach Rai, his legs stopped working. He fell face first into the dust, screaming. Then, silence. His body twitched once, then went still. His brain had shut down, completely. No hit, no wound, just silence. Rai turned his head slowly to Jorek. You invaded my world without words, he said softly. Now words will take yours apart. Inside Jorek's mind, thoughts were racing. He had heard stories of sound-based warfare, but they were rumors, old battlefield myths told to scare new soldiers. Now, every myth was standing in front of him, alive. The worst part, Rai hadn't even used the real sentence yet. That was the terror of Project Echo. The first sentence was only the infection. The real line came later, the one that destroyed networks, broke minds, and collapsed armies. And Jorek didn't know when that moment would come. Above them, alien ships started flickering. Holograms failed. Shields dropped for half a second. Just a glitch. Or the start of collapse. Rai took one slow step forward. That one step made the entire circle shake. Some aliens dropped their weapons. Others pointed them at each other in confusion. Many wanted to run but didn't dare. "I'll give you a choice," Rai said. "Leave or listen. But if you choose to listen—" He paused. "You will never speak again." Jorak was breathing heavily. He had fought 100 battles. He had faced monsters, machines, and mind warriors, but never a man with only words. He looked at Rai and saw no fear, only purpose. "Fall back," Jorak finally said to his army. But it was too late. The sound had already entered their minds. The sentence had already begun. Silence covered the battlefield like a dark fog. No one moved. No one blinked. Rai stood tall, calm, still, like a statue carved from war. All around him, the alien soldiers trembled. They had weapons in their hands, but no courage in their hearts. They had ships in the sky, but no command in their minds. And then, it happened. An alien officer, standing near the back of the circle, dropped his gun. He touched his helmet and whispered, "Make it stop, please. The noise in my head." He screamed, and then his eyes rolled back. He fell, dead. Jorak, the alien commander, stepped forward in shock. "Medic, get someone to check him." But before the medics could reach, another alien screamed. Then another. 3 soldiers dropped to the ground, shaking violently. Blood came from their noses. Their eyes were open wide in terror, as if they had seen death walk past them. "It's spreading," someone whispered. Rai didn't speak. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. Still, the damage was growing. One of the engineers opened a scanner. The screen flashed red. "Warning. Neural wave interference. DTTKTED. SORC. Human subject." The engineer gasped. "It's him. Just him. He's doing this without touching us." Jorak growled. He had seen many enemies, psychics, monsters, even planet killers. But this was worse. This was quiet death. Invisible. Silent. Slow. One sentence. That's all Rai had said. And it was still killing them. Back on his ship, Jorak's AI assistant continued to send reports. Mental collapse detected in 12% of the force. Project Echo confirmed. Human subject may carry mimetic warfare protocol. Translate. Jorak barked. His words are a virus. They enter the mind. Then they grow. Then they kill. Jorak clenched his fists. "Can we stop it?" No known counter yet. He looked at Rai again. This human was not using weapons, not using fire or machines. He was using something worse. Thoughts. He was killing with ideas. Suddenly, a brave alien captain stepped forward. His armor was gold, and he carried a hammer that could crush a tank. "I'll finish this," he said, and charged at Rai. The circle watched in silence. The captain ran fast, strong, no fear. But when he reached within 5 feet of Rai, something strange happened. His legs froze. His body stopped. Like a puppet with cut strings, he fell. His armor cracked. His mouth opened, but no words came. Just blood. Dead in 1 second. Rai finally turned his head. He spoke softly. Just 6 words. "This is just the Echo's beginning." The moment he said it, the ships above them flickered. Systems glitched. Shields failed. A signal, coded inside his voice, had entered their systems. It was now spreading like a disease across their network. Panic exploded. Aliens began to scream. Some ran toward the ships. Others shot blindly into the sky. Some dropped their weapons and covered their ears, but it was useless. The sentence was already inside. Jorak shouted, "Fall back." Everyone fall back. But it was too late for most. Half his army was already on the ground, twitching, gasping, or frozen. Rai began to walk forward. Slow, 1 step at a time. With each step, more systems failed. More soldiers collapsed. The battlefield that had once glowed with alien firepower was now a graveyard of silence. Back in Jorek's helmet, the AI gave the final report. First collapse complete. Human subject has achieved 42% neural shutdown rate. Estimated total collapse, 9 minutes. Jorek felt fear for the first time in his life. Real fear. "What are you?" he whispered. Rye heard him. He stopped walking. He looked up at the alien ships now struggling to stay in the air. And then he said, "I'm the answer to what you did to Earth." Jorek stepped back. His soldiers were gone. His power was gone. All that was left was one man, one sentence, and death. Smoke filled the sky. Alien ships above Dravis 9 flickered like broken stars. On the ground, the once proud circle of warriors was gone, scattered, collapsed, or dead. And in the center of the destruction stood Rye. No weapon, no armor, just a man. But he wasn't just any man. He was Project Echo, Earth's final answer to the galaxy's cruelty. Jorek, the commander, watched helplessly from a distance. His armor was cracked. His army destroyed. His helmet AI kept repeating. Echo signal expanding. Neural breach in progress. Fall back, fall back. But where could he run? Everything was already infected. 10 years ago, Earth's final day. The world was falling. Alien ships burned the sky. Cities were crushed like paper. Earth's armies were gone. Surrender was not an option, because the enemy didn't accept it. In a hidden lab beneath what was left of Europe, Project Echo was activated. Dr. Kessler stood in front of Rye, now 18. Stronger, colder, quiet. "We built you to be more than a soldier," she said. "You carry our last weapon, not in your hands, but in your voice." Rye looked at the screen. A countdown. The Echo sentence was ready. "When do I speak?" he asked. "When they gather, when they think they've won. That's when you speak, and their minds will turn against them." She handed him a simple communicator. Just one sentence. That's all it takes. Now, Dravis 9. Jorek could hardly breathe. He pressed his hand to his chest. His heart was pounding too fast. His ears rang, even though Rye was no longer speaking. "He's not human anymore," Jorek whispered. One of his last officers crawled toward him. "Commander, the virus. It's in our ships. It's even in the comms. Shut everything down." Jorek shouted. No signals. No sound. Too late. Rye raised his head slowly and stared at the last survivors. Then he spoke again. "I told you before, you were already dead." Just like before, his voice was calm. But the moment the words reached the air, 3 more aliens screamed in pain and collapsed. Their brains couldn't take it. The message was clear. His voice was the weapon. Back on the flagship orbiting the moon, a group of high-level commanders watched the chaos from their control room. One of them, a female alien named Valtra, stood frozen. "This is impossible. A human can't do this," she said. The technician next to her replied, "He's not just human. Earth turned him into a code, a living program made from language." Another officer stepped forward. "He's spreading a mimetic virus, through sound, through meaning. Even if we shut down tech, the damage is already done." Valtra stared at the screen. Rye was walking slowly toward Jorek, one step at a time. Every step, another collapse. "Send the orbital cannon," she ordered. Now, back on the battlefield, Jorek received a final message from his fleet. "Orbital strike incoming. They're going to burn the entire zone. You're not getting out." Jorek dropped to his knees. He looked up at Rye and asked the only question that mattered. "Why didn't you just kill us all at once?" Rye looked at him. His face was tired, but his eyes were full of purpose. "Because I wanted you to feel what Earth felt," he said, "when no one listened, when no one came to help, when the world died in silence." Jorek felt tears in his eyes, not from sadness, from fear. For the first time, The great alien general understood what humans had gone through. Too late. The sky turned red. The orbital cannon fired. A massive beam of white energy shot down from orbit, striking the battlefield with godlike force. Dust exploded. Ground cracked. Everything vanished in light. For a few seconds, there was only burning silence. Then, nothing. 2 hours later, orbit. Inside the command ship, Valtra looked at the battlefield scan. "Anything left?" she asked. A drone sent back the image. No bodies, no signals, just black earth. "Target erased," said the tech. But just as Valtra turned to leave, the screen blinked. "NEGLU isai gignail, DETCTD." They stared. A figure walked through the smoke. Alone. Alive. It was Rai. No burn marks. No injuries. Still calm. Still walking. Valtra dropped her cup. He survived an orbital strike. Rai looked up at the sky, and he spoke. They couldn't hear the words, but whatever he said, the entire command ship lost power in 10 seconds. The stars blinked quietly above Dravis 9. Alien ships floated in space like broken teeth. One by one, their lights were going out. Power loss, system failure, total silence. All caused by one human, who hadn't even lifted a hand. Rai stood at the center of the crater left by the orbital strike. Dust still floated in the air. The ground around him was glassed and cracked, but he was untouched. His eyes stared up at the Corps' command ship. He knew they were watching. So he spoke. A single word. Not loud, not shouted. Just softly, like a whisper made of knives. No one on the ship heard it directly. But every screen turned black. Every engine failed. Every soldier heard something in their mind. A strange sound that felt like their own thoughts breaking apart. Within seconds, the mighty Corps ship, the most advanced weapon in the galaxy, began to sink from orbit. Systems collapsed. Crew members fell unconscious. Weapons shut down. In under 2 minutes, the warship became a coffin drifting in the sky. Inside the failing ship, Valtra crawled across the floor toward the emergency signal pad. She hit the alarm button again and again, but nothing happened. She screamed to her eye. What was that? What did he say? The AI responded slowly, glitching. Unknown language, but meaning detected. Message reads, "Judgment has memory." Valtra froze. "That's not just a sentence," she whispered. "That's a curse." Back on the surface, Rai walked through the remains of the battlefield. Bodies lay silent. Smoke danced across the ground. He wasn't proud. He wasn't angry. He was just finished. The Echo sentence had done what it was made to do. Project Echo had worked. But there was still something inside him. A weight. A voice in his head. Dr. Kessler's voice. If you ever use the final word, you cannot come back from it. He had spoken part of it, but not all. There was still one word left. A true word hidden in his mind. A word so powerful it could erase not just ships, but history. He had never used it. Yet, 2 days later, Corps Council chambers. Far away on the capital planet of the Corps, 12 high-ranking alien leaders sat around a glowing table. All of them had seen the Dravis 9 footage. They were afraid. For the first time in centuries. They were afraid of a human. "We should destroy the entire sector," one said. "No, he might survive again," said another. The leader at the center, a cold-faced being named Exilar, stood and raised his hand. "We have used fear to control the galaxy," he said, "but we forgot that fear can speak back." He looked at the others. "I want that human found, or silenced, before he speaks the final word." Somewhere in deep space, Rai sat in an old Earth escape pod floating quietly among the stars. No lights, no signal, just peace. But inside his mind, memories kept playing. Earth, fire, screams, silence, The world that raised him was gone, and he had spoken for it. But was it enough? Or had he become something worse? He looked at his hand, just flesh. But when he closed his eyes, he could feel the final word waiting, like a blade behind his tongue, a word that could end everything, not just ships or armies, but the core itself, its laws, its memory, its fear. He whispered to himself, "Do they deserve it?" Back on Core Command, the galaxy's leaders had made a decision. A team of elite assassins, trained to resist mind-based attacks, was sent. Their mission: kill Rai before he speaks again. But they didn't know one thing. Ray didn't need to speak anymore. He had already planted the word. In data, in airwaves, in thoughts. Even silence now carried his message. One by one, core worlds started to go dark. First, a station near the edge of the galaxy lost all contact. Then, a mining colony screamed for help as its workers collapsed from a sound no one could hear. Then, nothing. No trace. No survivors. Just a sentence left on every screen. The word remembers. The core had started this war. But Rai was finishing it with the thing they never respected: language. One final scene. A child's voice. On a far-off world, a small human girl asked her grandfather, "Did we win, Grandpa?" The old man smiled sadly. "No," he said, "we didn't win." The child frowned. "Then why are they all afraid of us now?" The old man looked at the stars. "Because one of us finally spoke, and the galaxy learned never to ignore a dying world's voice." The stars were quiet. The war was over, but not in the way wars usually end. There was no treaty, no surrender, no last battle. Just silence. Planet after planet fell quiet. Machines shut down, minds collapsed, words disappeared. It was like the galaxy itself had stopped breathing. And at the center of this silence was a human, Rai, the last voice of Earth. He didn't raise a gun. He didn't command fleets. He just spoke, and the galaxy listened, even when it didn't want to. Now his voice was everywhere, even when he said nothing. Core Capital. 1 week later, the mighty city that once floated in the clouds was now grounded and dying. The leaders of the core sat in darkness. Their communication systems were still offline. Their AI networks were frozen. Every time they tried to restart something, the same message appeared. The word remembers. Commander Exilar stood by the broken window. Outside, the sky was gray, like a world in mourning. "How can one man do this?" he whispered. The advisor behind him said, "He didn't do it alone. We made him. We gave him the reason." Exilar clenched his fists. "We destroyed Earth because they were weak." The advisor looked at him coldly. "No, you destroyed Earth because you were afraid they might fight back. And now, they did." Meanwhile, Rai's mind. Rai sat alone on a dead moon, watching the stars. He had no ship, no food, no company. But he wasn't afraid. He had become something more than human now. His thoughts were echoing through systems, across satellites, through silent languages. Even the core's most powerful devices could no longer block him. He didn't have to shout. His silence was louder than their weapons. But inside, Rai was tired. He remembered Earth, his mother's voice, his father's stories, the blue sky, the sound of rain. All gone now. The people who made him were dust. He had spoken for them, and the galaxy heard. Now, the question in his heart was different. Should I keep going? He could. The final word still waited inside him. One last sentence, too powerful to release. If he spoke it, the core wouldn't just fall. It would vanish, erased from history, like Earth was. Back on Core, a change begins. In the ruins of their cities, Core civilians gathered in fear. They didn't want war anymore. They didn't trust their leaders. They whispered stories of the human with the killing voice. But some whispered something else. Maybe he was right. Maybe we should have listened to Earth. Maybe it's not too late. In a quiet classroom, a core teacher told her students the truth. There was a planet called Earth. It was beautiful. We destroyed it because we feared it, but one of them survived. And he taught us, words can burn deeper than fire. The students listened, not with fear, but with respect. The message had reached them, not just in their systems, but in their hearts. Final scene. Rai's choice. Alone on the dead moon, Rai stood and looked at the stars one last time. He raised the small device Dr. Kessler had given him long ago, the one that held the final word. He pressed his thumb on the button. The word began to unlock. Just one breath, and he could wipe out the core, erase them from every system, every mind, every corner of the galaxy. But then, he paused. He remembered the child from Earth, the one who once held a flower in her hand and had said, "Let them live, even if they don't love us." He closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his face. And then, he deactivated the final word. He chose silence. True silence. Not as a weapon, but as mercy. 1 month later, across the galaxy, the systems slowly came back online. The stars brightened. The core changed. They rebuilt, not with fear, but with memory. They didn't forget Earth. They taught its story. They taught Rai's name, not as a warning, but as a voice of justice. And though Rai was never seen again, some say his message still lives, not in machines, but in the way people now speak, with care, with meaning, with memory. Final message, written across all screens in the galaxy. You heard my words. Now hear my silence. Do better than we did, or I will return. Rai, voice of Earth. The galaxy was different now. It was quiet, like a place finally taking a breath after years of war. No more battles. No more fleets. No more fear. It was just space. The stars twinkled as they always had, but now their light felt more peaceful, more patient. The galaxy had learned something deep, something no one had expected. Rai had spoken, but not in the way they thought. Core Command Center. A new day. Inside the Core's central command, the once proud leaders now worked differently. They were still there, but they weren't the same. The rooms were quieter. The halls, once filled with military officers and advisors, now had civilians walking by, wondering if the galaxy could really change. XLR sat at his desk, staring at the holographic maps of the galaxy. He wasn't looking for enemies anymore. He was looking for peace. There were no more reports of uprisings or rebellions. The people were listening to each other now. He sighed. We thought we were the rulers of everything, but we were just the loudest voices. In the forgotten corners of space, on a small forgotten planet far from the central systems, a group of humans watched the stars. They had heard the stories of Rai and the echo sentence. No one knew where he had gone. No one knew if he was still alive. But the words he had spoken were all around them. Everywhere they looked, they saw the signs. Respect for life. Silence when needed. Peace after the chaos. They had learned to listen, to understand, to feel. The girl who had once asked her grandfather, "Did we win?" now sat on a hill, gazing up at the sky, and she whispered to herself, "We didn't just win. We changed." Rai's final journey. Rai stood alone on a rocky moon, his back to the universe, his eyes closed. He had done what was needed. He had spoken when no one else would. He had shown the galaxy what it meant to listen. But now he could feel the weight of the silence that came after a storm. He didn't need to speak anymore. His mission was over. Rai had been the weapon, but he was also the healer. His words had torn down the old galaxy, and now they would help build the new one. He knew that someday someone would ask about him. Someone would wonder where he had gone, and they would understand. Rai had never wanted to be a king. He had only wanted the universe to listen. And now, the galaxy did. Across the galaxy, a quiet revolution. In the months and years that followed, the galaxy slowly changed. The core was rebuilt, but not with the same ambition. They were rebuilding with purpose. People from all corners of the universe worked together. Old enemies became new allies. Old fears became new understanding. A new age had begun. But in the quiet of their minds, they all carried something with them. The echo. Not a voice. Not a weapon. But a memory. And when it was needed most, the last echo of Rai's voice would return. To remind them all, we must do better. Final words. And in the farthest reaches of space, where no one could reach him, Rai sat in silence. He had done his part. He had spoken the truth the galaxy needed to hear. And now, he waited. Because one day, the galaxy would need him again. But this time, they would call him not as an enemy, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. A reminder of the time when words could change the course of history, when silence could save the future, and when humanity spoke, the galaxy had to listen. The end.